Back to our top story. Israel will summon Australia's ambassador to explain the federal government's decision to reverse its recognition of West Jerusalem as the country's capital. Israel's embassy in Canberra was also blindsided by the move, which prompted an angry response from the Prime Minister, Yair Lapid, who called into question Australia's treatment of a close ally. Joining me live is former Labor MP Michael Danby. Thanks so much for your time, Michael. We spoke to Dave Sharma. Good to see you. We spoke to Dave Sharma last hour, who you know very well. He's a former ambassador to Israel. He says that this has never happened before. An ambassador has never been called in by the Israel government. So does that show you just how seriously they're taking it, how miffed they are, perhaps?
Well, Laura, I've been interviewed by half a dozen Israeli news sources, including a TV station. It's very unusual for the Prime Minister of Israel to put out a couple of statements. And I think it's because they value Australia's friendship so much and they think so highly of us, given our record in being in that part of the world in both the First and Second World Wars. So I think Dave was right. They're both blindsided in Israel and here. And Penny Wong's foreign policy has been very professional until now, but she says one night that this is only a change in the DFAT website, and the next day it's a cabinet meeting. It's obviously not telling the truth to people in order to prevent them mobilising opposition to it.
Sure, but this isn't a unilateral decision by Penny Wong. This seems to have been a decision by the government as a whole. Why, do you think? What do you make of the timing? Because this wasn't discussed in the election.
The timing is weird. It's 2 weeks from an Israeli election, and as Sharma said, it can only help
You good? We've still got you.
Am I back?
Yep,
yeah.
We've still got you.
It can only help the Bibi Netanyahu and the right. The centre left will be very upset by this. So, look, I hate to say this, Laura. I know people don't like to discuss politics, but the Albanese-Wong government is a socialist-left government. It is not like past Hawke or Keating governments. And therefore, symbolically on this issue, on raising aid to the Palestinian Refugee Agency, UNRWA, a week ago to $20 million, doubling our taxpayers' aid to them, despite the fact that Sweden and other European countries and Arab states are cutting it back because of their extremist textbooks that they give to Gazan students and their employment of Hamas operatives as members of UNRWA. So Australia's giving $20 million, and at the same time our parliament says these organisations are terrorist organisations. So UNRWA, West Jerusalem, and they're about to, not in the next few days, do unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state. That's because the Australian government is more left-wing than a normal Labor government. Now, I know Penny Wong's fan base at the ABC don't want to hear that, but I'm sorry, that's the truth. In that context, they've been really responsible to date with Australia's issues in East Asia and the South Pacific with China. So give them credit, but this, as Greg Sheridan, the foreign editor, said today, is student politics, childish, and Labor's first mistake.
So are you calling the Albanese government a socialist-left government just on this issue, or a little bit more generally?
A little bit more generally. In the Hawke Keating days, there would never have been a situation where the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister were both members of the left. In fact, the national security positions were not open to them because they thought that this would lead to a public distrust. Now, the political spectrum in Australia has shifted. It's more acceptable to people these days. But, you can't ignore political realities. I know at the ABC they like to discuss only identity politics, but the politics of politics is very important too. And this government's orientation is the reason we explain these things.
You've been
Malaysia or Indonesia says.
Michael Danby, you've been inside this government. You know about the politics and who sits where on this spectrum where it comes to Israel and Palestine and balancing up the issue. Who do you think has driven this decision internally? Is it top-down? Is it Anthony
now
Albanese?
That's a good question, Laura. You can tell you've been in Canberra for a while because you know this too. Of course, Albo and Wong had to go along with it. I'm no big personal fan of Penny Wong. She prevented me speaking on this issue at the national conference, and she very cruelly treated my dear friend Kimberly Kitching with her remarks about her being childless. But there are other forces involved in this too. I think it's significant that it was done at a cabinet meeting, and there are certain people in New South Wales who are very close to Bob Carr, such as Tony Burke, who I'm sure would have been very happy. Carr's been, like Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas, been over the moon with this on Twitter. Okay,
so Bob Carr and those close to Bob Carr, you've named Tony Burke, but I think of Tony Burke's electorate as well and who he represents. Would this be driven by the makeup of his electorate, perhaps?
Oh, look, you know, we've got as many Christians from the Arab world. We've got now all of the Yazidis. We've got all of the victims, the refugees who've come from Syria. I think this is a much more complex picture than simpletons who are pro-Palestinian make it out. There's the Abraham Accords. This is completely against the zeitgeist of what's happening in the region. Just that's why this is so odd. Oh, we've got to get some Australian ministers who go over there, speak to some of the Arab countries, go to the UAE, look at Israeli startup nation, and just see that we've all moved past this student politics. Really, it's so passé. I just wish the Australian government would send a few ministers over there, get their head around these things. I mean, would they like it if we just decided that Melbourne was the capital of Australia and said, oh, no, we don't recognise Canberra because of past mistreatment of Indigenous people?
Sure. Well, I don't know whether that's comparing apples and apples there, Michael Danby, but I do take your point. I mean, I feel like once, not too long ago, there was talk about moving the embassy into Jerusalem. That's never going to happen now.
Oh, I don't know about never. I mean, what happens if Saudi Arabia and some of the other Arab states join this Abraham Accord and they convince the Palestinians to make the deal that they've refused 2 times to Bill Clinton, to Barack Obama? So, you know, all things are possible. We all know what the ultimate solution is: peace between 2 states. That's what Australia recognised way back in 1948. But every time Penny Wong and Albo can't evade this, the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. They've been offered peace deals. They could have had a Palestinian state and they refuse to have it because, unfortunately, they've educated their people that they should have the whole of geographic Palestine and eliminate the Jewish state. That's not going to happen. Israel is now a country of 9.5 million, a technological and economic superpower. It's got vast energy in the Mediterranean Sea now that will help hopefully fuel Europe during this winter and the next winter. And you know, the power balance has shifted. I think Albo and Wong need to get over there and get oriented to what's really happening. Things have changed, and no wonder Lapid is, I'm sorry to use an Australian expression, but pissed off with them.
He certainly seems like it, and so do you. Michael Danby, thanks so much for your time.
No probs.